As we continue our reflections on the passing of former Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, we now speak to Technical Advisor at National Treasury, that's Ismail Momoniat. Mr. Momoniat, good to have you on the program, despite the circumstances, of course. Today we honor the legacy of Tito Mboweni, really a towering figure in South Africa's financial landscape. Can you share your personal memories of Tito Mboweni and what he meant to you both personally and professionally?
Yes, no, thank you. And let me express my condolences to the family and say it is a great loss of a giant of a figure in our politics and our democracy. In terms of what I remember of him, I mean, I've known him since he came back to South Africa after the 1990s and in the ANC economics department. And of course, whilst he was Labour Minister and Governor and so on. But my most recent interaction with him was as Minister of Finance when he was our direct boss. And what I remember about him is that professionally, you know, Tito, or as we call him, Governor, understood the economic challenges and the need for restructuring. And what he was able to do was also to handle the politics, to speak to his fellow leaders in the ANC about the need to restructure, to stop the bleeding with state-owned entities who were dependent on the fiscus. But more importantly, he saw the need for economic growth. He called up, if I remember, 2 colloquiums with international economists, and that led to his initiating and promoting Operation Nhlanhla, because he saw the need for restructuring the network industries in South Africa because they were holding up growth. He also understood, if you remember, in his first budget in 2019, he brought in an aloe and gave it to fellow MPs because he realized that these were not good times like before, but these were going to be tough times and we needed to be more resilient. He also oversaw the COVID pandemic and the lockdown and brought in policies like the COVID loan guarantee to small businesses and smaller businesses. So he certainly, I think, saw the politics and he was also able to explain it to people. So when he tried to explain what was happening on the fiscal side, on the budget side, he used the analogy of a hippopotamus, of a hippo, whose mouth was, wide open. At the top, you had expenditure going up, and what was going down was revenue. So the gap was getting bigger, and he said we needed to close the mouth of the hippo. Otherwise, we'd run into problems like Argentina. So professionally, certainly, there was that. Let me say personally, too. I mean, yes, he loved life. He was a private person, but he had strong values. For example, if I remember, he never took a government car. He kept his own car. He always let his security or protectors chase him because he wanted to run away from them. He wanted his private life. He certainly took on his colleagues about the spending on cars for ministers because, as I said, he did differently. And of course, he used to love tweeting at night, which used to, every morning when Treasury officials would get up, we would have to look, what has he tweeted last night, okay, that we'd have to respond to. So certainly have fond memories of him, and of course his cooking and his pilchards. He certainly had a lot of color, but in contrast, he was a very private person. I think that was something that I noticed about him.
So Mboweni was also known, Mr. Momoniat, for really breaking barriers, especially as the first black governor of the central bank. What do you think this achievement meant for South Africa, especially at that time?
So I think it was very important because he certainly, it was important to provide legitimacy to an important institution like the Reserve Bank. And he had firstly, when he was appointed after he had done a few years as Minister of Labour, he was brought in, I think, to shadow the then Governor Chris Stals. And of course, he championed inflation targeting and the need to bring down inflation. Inflation was much higher in those days. And he was able, as I said, just like he brought in tough restructuring of our state-owned entities, or as he advocated for that, he also advocated for, monetary policy to be, in the constitution it was independent, but to give effect to that, and to bring in that policy of inflation targeting.
Yeah, but to latch on to the practical, Mr. Momoniat, can you still hear us clearly?
I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, I'm saying to latch on the sentiment that you raised earlier about Mboweni being a very pragmatic or practical leader. How did his economic philosophies indeed influence the direction of South Africa's financial policies, especially during his tenure?
Look, he was there for, as you know, just about 3 years.
Yeah.
And as I said, it followed state capture. And so the country was really recovering from a difficult period where we were also having low or no growth. And that's why he wanted to focus on economic growth. But unfortunately, then you had COVID, which knocked the entire growth project out of the window for at least 2020 and 2021. So whilst he was preparing, if you look at the budget for 2020, for the tough times that were coming, he had the 2019 budget where he was bringing these changes. He had to delay implementing some of those policies, but he still brought it on later that year with Operation Nhlanhla, which he championed, as I said. So there was a delay in what he wanted to implement because of COVID. So in a sense, he had to take a pause and focus on getting over that pandemic. And then, of course, he brought us back to get Operation Nhlanhla on board and to try and get growth up again. Of course, he decided at some point that he didn't want to stay in politics for too long. So he did not stay, I think, as perhaps as long as he should have. But that's history, yes.
Yeah, that's history. But safe to say that every leader does face challenges as well. Mr. Momoniat, what were some of the most significant obstacles in your view that Mboweni dealt with? And how did he navigate them beyond COVID?
Look, the first one that he faced was, firstly, as I said, with state capture, our institutions had been, some institutions had been all but almost destroyed. So he had to get SARS fixed up. He took forward the Nugent proposals. He ensured that he followed their recommendations to appoint the new commissioner at that time, Edward Kiswater. He also brought in the then new commissioner at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. So he kind of protected those institutions, made sure that they got the best people possible to head those institutions, supported management to make changes. So institutionally, he certainly left a legacy post-state capture in fighting that corruption. The other thing, and it's not just an economic issue, but he was it was a strong proponent of non-racialism and anti-sexism. And so he always promoted those policies when it came to, for example, making appointments. He wanted people on merit, but he also wanted to ensure that the approach was non-racial and non-sexist in the way he approached those institutions. The other issue, as I said, were the economic policies, because we had from at that point more than, we had 10 years, in a sense, the 9 lost years, 10 years of no or low growth. And so he saw the need for those structural changes to our institutions or our state-owned entities to reduce their dependency on the fiscus and to get them to play the network industries, to play a role so that they could enhance the growth potential of the South African economy. So I think that's the sort of legacy that he'll leave as Minister of Finance. Of course, he's got a broader legacy from his previous political life as Labour Minister and as Governor of the Reserve Bank, Governor number 8, as he liked to be called.
And as we wrap, Mr. Momoniat, the former minister also played a crucial role as a mentor. As we reflect on this, how did he inspire and indeed guide younger professionals, especially in the financial sector?
Look, in the financial sector, I mean, what he did was, we had just implemented the Twin Peaks system under Mr. Nene in 2018. And when Mr. Nene resigned, as I said, he ensured that on the one hand, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority was set up properly, that its top leaders were appointed. He appointed the commissioner. And with regard to SARS, not that he appointed, it's the president who appoints the commissioner of SARS, but he made the recommendation to the president, because the president normally would leave the appointment of the commissioner to make the recommendation to the president, to the Minister of Finance. So as I said, he ensured we followed the Newzroom process. So he brought in integrity to government. He brought in a system of merit into our institutions, and especially after state capture. I think it was very important to break that culture of corruption that had taken hold, which he left the institutions, gave them the independence, and he wanted them to do what they had to do, including to counter the corruption and to operate with more integrity and win over people and the country when they were doing their job.
Mr. Momoniat, let me thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts and memories of the late former Finance Minister Tito Mboweni.